Living your life for God and prioritizing Him in your marriage can be uncomfortable, and it goes against the current of today's world.
So we created a podcast to talk practically about our marriage and family, because we may make a plan, but God is the one who directs our steps.
And that has led us here to Radical Direction. The following podcast is a ministry production of The Sevenfold. To find out more, go to thesevenfold.com. This is our first video episode for the podcast, and I wanted to film it like this because I got no makeup on. We're just chilling at home barefoot.
In these severe moments in life, right?
Yeah.
Any area of your marriage that there's an issue going on is going to be magnified. It's not just going to be magnified as in get blown up, but it's also going to be spotlighted too.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be something that's on the mind of both of you.
We have had so much life change and so many things happen.
Yeah. If you're already in a point where you're at high stress level and you're upset at something and you don't have time to decompress because you're dealing with all these things in this intense moment of time, how's that going to convey in communication?
Hopefully give you a little bit of wisdom that maybe can stick in the back of your mind, that as these hard things happen, you can just hang on to it. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Radical Direction.
Welcome back.
It has been a minute since we have recorded an episode.
Yeah.
I think it was November or something.
Too long.
Yeah. So it's been a while since we recorded an episode, and, we're coming to you today, super casual. This is actually our first video episode. The part about that's super funny is that we are absolutely jerry-rigging this stuff with the things that we have in our house right now.
We're also trying to be cool and hip with our handheld microphones.
Yeah. Which is fine because we have good mics, but I don't want to buy lapel mics or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So our ministry is the Sevenfold. So our awesome partner in that, Paul, was just hold your mics. It'll be great. That's the cool thing. That's what the kids are doing these days.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this is our first video episode for the podcast. And I wanted to film it like this because I got no makeup on. We're just chilling at home barefoot. We're not prepared at all. We don't even have anything planned really content-wise for this episode, but I have a little bit of an idea of what I wanted to talk about. It's just that it's been a long time since we've been on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to get an episode out in March. And so I'm really hoping that we can get this one under the wire and get it out by the end of the month. Because we have had so much life change and so many things happen.
Yeah.
It's been super stressful 2024, honestly, ever since the beginning of January. And we kind of wanted just to update you guys on that a little bit, because we know that there's a lot of hard things that people go through in marriage. And there's a lot of things that happen just in life, raising children, trying to have kids, just the journey through dealing with your parents and just the things that happen in your job or life. And it's really difficult. So we wanted to just kind of say, hey, this is an update. This is what we're doing. This is how we've been. And we hope that you guys are doing well as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A lot of you guys that watch the podcast and that listen in are growing and developing in your relationships. People have gotten engaged. We've had listeners that have had children recently.
Or in the process of having children.
Yeah, exactly. And so we really just want to shout out to all you guys. We really do love you. And we want to just kind of help you out. Hopefully give you a little bit of wisdom that maybe can stick in the back of your mind, that as these hard things happen, you can just hang on to it a little bit. Jacob and I have no means have everything figured out. But, we have been married for 10 years coming up here in just 2 months.
2 more months. Wow.
And so we have 6 children and we've had a lot of life experience. And so we just want to be able to be that friend that might just be a teeny bit further down the road than you. That's just kind of guiding you along. By no means, like I said, experts in marriage or anything like that, but we'd like to help because that's just kind of who we are. So why don't we give a little, as much as you're comfortable with sharing, a little bit of a life update of what's been going on since January?
All right. Well, we started the year out getting COVID.
Did we really?
Yeah. Well, Christmas break. Yeah. In the New Year's. And then it was I
kind of just...
And then COVID landed and it was Happy New Year.
Of all the things that we've had going on, that just was right through my brain.
Okay, whatever. We got COVID. Great. Woo.
Yeah.
I know. No, but first,
right.
Y'all joking aside, I know it's a serious thing for a lot of people. It's impacted people in a lot of ways.
January, after the first week of January, we had
Uh,
to pull one of our kids out of school.
oh yeah. Yeah,
Um,
so one of our kids came out of school. So Jenny's been homeschooling him since the beginning of this year. In addition to all the other things that she does, like
that's
this.
been a huge shift. It's been hard. That was difficult. I think one of the things that was hard about that in particular, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but
Mm,
just, as a parent, there are things that you encounter that you're like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. Like I have to do it. And it's not easy by any means, but you have to do it. And I had a lot of counsel in my life that were like, not necessarily close friends and family, because close friends and family are like, you got to do what's best, but like outside counsel. So like maybe therapists or doctors or people around that were like, oh yeah, but if you homeschool this child, and pull them out for the second half of the school year, like then your life is going to change a lot. And that's going to be really hard for you. And
mm,
I'm just looking at them kind of like they have four heads. Like, it's my child. Like,
yeah.
what would I
What
not
else would you
do for
do?
my
Oh, I'm just going to
child?
let him suffer in school.
Yeah. And granted, I know like we're privileged to be able to do
Do
that.
that. Yeah.
I'm already at home. But I do have to sacrifice the time I pour into our ministry, the time I pour into my media business. I have to sacrifice certain things of how my house is kept up, or the children, certain things that I do in order to accommodate all of that. So it's not by any means easy, but you do get to a place where you have to do what you have to do. But yeah, anyway, so that happened like I said, like January 8th or something like that. It was right at the start of the year.
Yeah. So that happened. And then, we're going to have our furry companion join us, Miss
Cool.
Hudson.
Okay.
Um, so then right after that, my dad, who's been living with us since about September, he had two instances where he essentially lost strength and stability and then plopped down on his butt right in front of his chair in the basement
Yeah.
and
Fell.
basically fell, but not hard. But it was enough to really kind of trigger something in him that I can't do things on my own, and I need to text my son constantly for help with whatever it is, and everything kind of just petered out from there.
Yeah.
So we started, buying things for him to make things easier, swapping out his one chair for a raised chair, trying to adjust things, and he did not want anything adjusted. He wants his life to just be the same, eat the same 2 meals a day, have everything on a pattern, like down to a T. So every change that we tried to make, we met resistance, we met upsetness, we met depression, right? We had to confront all these different things on the way to
Yeah.
trying to make progress.
Yeah. Until ultimately he had a fall that was enough
Mhm.
that he ended up in the hospital.
Right. So then,
Which started a long cascade of,
yeah, so that was
Yeah.
in January. He had a fall, went to the hospital. A couple days later, he was transferred to an acute rehabilitation center that focuses on getting you back to where you were before, whatever
an
it
incident.
got you in the hospital.
Yeah.
Because he was locked up. He couldn't move his legs. He needed complete 100% help to move, to do anything.
Yeah.
So they transferred him there.
He was at that rehab facility and move facilities. And then he was basically in those facilities. Let's just call it almost 2 months. And then he came home.
Yeah.
And
About 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and he came home. Yeah. So we've been in a situation that has been raw and hard, because like you were saying, at a moment's notice you would have to go
Mhm.
there for some important thing that
Yep.
needed to be happen, support a training, a this or a that. But now the past 2 weeks have been the hard part,
Mhm.
because I
Especially
feel
that
like there
first
was
week, that first couple
the
days.
first couple days felt like a month.
Yeah.
And I think there is the grace of the Lord is there. And I want you guys to just be encouraged that, like, whatever the situation is that you're going through, in the ways that He can, the Lord will prepare you for it. So even in the fall, and him being in the hospital and the various centers that he was in, it gave us time to mentally adjust of like, what's
Mhm.
our life going to be like when he inevitably comes back to the house? Even the Lord kind of giving us, we won't get into it, but even before the fall happened, the Lord kind of nudged Jacob of like, hey, something's going to happen in the future. That's not great. So there were little things that we were kind of preparing for.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you don't have, like, we didn't have full preparation, like we could think that we knew what was going to happen when he came back home, but we didn't really know what was going to happen until we were living in it.
Yeah. And then when you're living in it, it's like, okay, this has happened. Okay, well, how do I counter that? How do I adjust? And so every single day, and in some cases, every single hour, as we learned more and more about his needs and what was going on, it's like, okay, we had to adjust. And so we were constantly pivoting. We're constantly changing our schedules, changing things around, trying to accommodate different things and different changes that were going on. And then once we started getting some at home care from doctors and therapists to come and see him, is when the learning began. And it was like, oh, here's how we can help him better, but also they were saying, and here's how we can help you better to help alleviate me, to alleviate you, to change our how things have been going, to really get him back towards more of an independent state versus a dependent state.
Yeah. And some of it has been helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it has just been like, it's a nice thought, but like it still doesn't take.
Sleeping again was nice.
Yeah. Like the first week and a half, really, about that ish, Jacob, it was really like our home is like a newborn. Like we've brought a newborn home.
Yeah.
But instead of me doing all of the typical things for a newborn, it was Jacob, multiple times in the middle of the night getting up to care for his dad, multiple times during the day. Every meal, everything is dependent. Like it requires, there's this level of dependence is what I'm trying to say. And so it's very difficult, especially because Jacob's working from home. It's 2 full-time jobs overlapping at the same time. And that makes it super difficult.
And having to be very proactive and advocating for my dad.
Yeah. And that's
with
why
everybody, you think the systems are in place, and to a degree they are, but at some point, you at the end of the day, if you care, you have to advocate. You have to be proactive. And then that proactivity is what can blend in and kind of push other things out of the way in order to really make room for that need. It's like, okay, well, I have to do this by this point in time. I have to do this thing, the next thing by this point in time. So it's just, getting all these things going, right? And now we've kind of entered this, we've ramped up and we're kind of coasting. We got a couple of more things to get in place, but at the end of the day,
it changes everything, right?
Yeah.
Jacob. So I want to just encourage you, like the reason why we're talking about this now, the reason why we're 2.5 weeks in and we're pulling out the camera and the mic and we're going to do this is because, like this is life and it's raw. And I that's why the video is the way it is. Because I know that when you're struggling, you just need some help. You need some support. You need someone that's like going to just talk to you and say, hey, do you have anything that I can do to help? Is there anything you can give me to help me in my situation? And I wanted to be able to like film this and talk about it because we don't know what the road is ahead for us. It might encourage us to look back on this video and be like, oh yeah, that's like, I do need to hear that. Like, it's going to be okay. We might look back and say like, wow, we were really struggling. Like, but the Lord pulled us through. And so
amen, he did.
If you're feeling that way about whatever situation is in your life, I mean, just to be perfectly frank with you, I don't like to get on camera on YouTube without doing my makeup. But like, when you're in a hard time in your life, when you're in a hard season like that, you don't care. Like you're not caring about those things. Like that's not whatever. And so I know that there's going to be a mom, a woman, someone that is going to be in pain, that's going to be struggling with something. And you're not going to care about any of that. You're just going to want to care that you have connection, that someone's been through it. Someone's going through a hard time too. And I want to be that for you. We want to be that for you. And that's why I want to kind of film it this way. I will say that I do think that there are some things that are really important when you're going through a hard time.
Yeah.
And I do want to kind of talk about that. And I want to get your opinion on your kind of perspective on it. The first being, I think that the making a decision in your own mind is the hardest thing to get to. It feels like the hardest thing to achieve. But then once the decision's been made, that starts a cascade of things that starts falling everything into place.
Yeah.
And then future problems become less of a problem because you know the path that you're on. So for example, like Jacob was in that decision too of whether or not we were going to pull that kid out of school and start homeschooling them. There's a lot of factors to take into consideration. But ultimately, I was the one that was wrestling a lot with it because I was the one who was going to be the homeschool teacher. I'm the one that's in the conversations with the school and the counselors and all the people. So it weighed heavily on me because there's so many things to take into consideration, right? Like their health, emotional wellness, all those things. Mine, how is it going to work? Just the reality of everything. But I will tell you what, once I finally made the decision and pulled the trigger and sent that email to the school and the county and everything, everything else started to fall in place. Because if it was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Well, it became very clear. I have to set at least a schedule. I have to put out a block of time that I'm going to homeschool, and
you step down from the remaining part of your duties.
And that is just the timing of the Lord, because there was a serving role that I was with our church that I had been serving in for years. And then November of last year, the Lord was like, I want you to give it up now. You're done. And I was like, okay. There was a little bit of wrestling, but I had been doing it for so long that I was like, it's fine. Like somebody else can do it now. And then I made it so that I was like, I'm going to serve through Christmas and New Year, but like the New Year's Eve service that's my last time like serving.
Yeah.
And then I'm done January 1. And then as it so turns out, I had 1 week after that is when I pulled him out of school, and then maybe 2 weeks after that is when your dad fell. Like all these things started happening. So even in the small way, the Lord was like, I'm in a season where there's so much required of me. You're in a season, there's so much required of you. And the Lord was really preparing us for that. Jacob even ran into a boss that he really shouldn't even be running into probably in the hallway, who was like, you don't have to come into work. You can telework every day, which is not the policy. And that is such a blessing because of what's going on with your dad. So I might have gotten off track a little bit.
No, it's okay.
But what I wanted to say was that that is, once you make the decision, then things fall into place. So, and I know that you experienced that a lot of what do we do about your dad? And then once we decided he's coming home, we're going to care for him because there's really not any other option for him. A lot of things were easier, but you have to make that mental decision of this is the path that I'm going to take and I'm going to do it. And then, for you giving up serving at church and giving up some volunteering things that you really love doing.
Yeah.
Because you have to be here because you're a full-time caregiver as well now.
Yeah.
Me absorbing a lot of responsibility, taking things off of your plate because you have so much on your plate, So then if you think about it at the end of every day, at the end of every week, you're exhausted. I'm exhausted. Your plate is full. My plates are full. And so it's not a competition. It's not who's more tired, who's more exhausted, because we're both exhausted. We've both been doing so much. And that's the part I think about this, that there's been an unusual grace, I feel between us, especially considering of our 10 years of marriage. I'm sure there are many times that we've been way less graceful with each other for way less.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually the severity of the heaviness of what we're going through that that tendency to compete is dead. It's no, I'm complaining about my day and you don't have to be well, my day sucked too. It's no, we both know that our days were really hard and we're just communicating with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's that part of that too, is with each of these things is squashing down that part of you that wants to be selfish. It's okay, well, I had a hard day. And so now I'm going to, go binge something, right? TV, food, whatever it was, right? But at the same time, you can't. No, you finish this one task. You've got a full plate. Keep cleaning it. Keep clearing it.
What's funny about that is I didn't even think about it, but December, the end of December, almost January 1, the Lord had talked to us about like, hey, I want you to stop watching TV. I want you to stop playing video games.
Yeah.
I want you to do this all the way until the end of March.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about it, we didn't have the time for it anyway.
I've thought about this on several occasions. So it's like, if we had not been in this period of fasting of these things,
Yeah.
and had to try
Consecration.
to continue doing those things during this period of time, like for me, like I would have been drained, crushed.
And it would have been hard because like you and I love, like we were just talking about this, we love to sit down on the couch at the end of the day and watch TV with each other.
Yeah.
And we might only literally watch 45 minutes, like one episode of something, and then have to go to bed because we have to prioritize our sleep. But at the same time, it's like, if we hadn't both been on this thing, then I could be ready to sit down and relax and unwind. And you're like, I can't, or you get up, and then I could get frustrated because you've been interrupted, or you get frustrated and whatever. But the fact that like we were both on the same page about it is super helpful, because I do think that it is if that's a thing for you where you want to watch TV with your spouse and unwind, genuinely, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We've gone through now 3 months of not doing it. We've been consecrating ourselves in that and spending more time, so much more time in prayer. It's been insane how much more time in prayer. However, I don't think there's anything wrong with unwinding with your spouse. I will say what this season has taught me is that if that's the only way that you can unwind, if that's what you need to unwind in order to de-stress from your day, then I do think it would be good to go through a long period, not a week, not even a month, because it really takes longer than that to reset certain habits in you. I don't care what psychologists say. It's more than 21 days to make or break a habit. So I really feel like that it's good to experiment with it, of like, I'm actually going to make sure that I can get refreshed just with my spouse in prayer, or just with myself in prayer, just reading the Bible, maybe listening to a worship song. Find a way to get refreshed and relax and unwind without having to just numb out your brain and watch something mindless, because that's really what it is. And again, I don't think there's anything super bad about it, but we have to be able to function well without it.
Yeah. And in the same time, and we've gotten some advice on this, is like in our marriage, right, we had not spent a ton of time praying together, right, and spending a lot of time together in that regard. And so to have taken these things away that we would typically unwind with and spend a lot of time doing, it's like, okay, well, you don't have to then fill it with equivalent amount of time to praying and worshiping, all those kinds of things, right? It's just that 5 minutes.
And that's it's not equivalent.
Start. I mean, it's just like,
he's supernatural, right?
Just start, right? 5 minutes, praying in tongues, 5 minutes praying together, just do something, right? And the Lord's like, I've been waiting for you, and I want to spend time with you, and every moment that you spend time with me is precious to me, says the Lord, right?
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes we can literally just like hold hands and like take a deep breath and just be like, I mean, we hug so much more now. Like literally every time we see each other,
collapse on each other.
We do. Like we have to, because like one, as humans, we do need that physical touch.
Yep.
But two, it's like we don't need to say anything. It's just like I literally just need, I just need it. I did want to ask you a couple questions. I was like, I feel like we need to wrap up the conversation.
Yeah.
However, there was a couple of questions that I had found online about like questions that you can ask your spouse if you're going through a hard time. I'll just read down the questions, and then we can just talk about a couple of them, like one or two. One question is, do you trust me?
Yes.
Right. And so, going through that with your spouse of why, and not attacking each other, but just like going through why, like in a stressful situation, like, do you trust me? Why and how, kind of thing. Scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate our communication? This is a super huge one because communication is massively important. In general, as we talked about, pretty much every episode we've talked about communication, but like in times of stress, even more so. Your spouse is not a mind reader. If you need something, say it. If you're expecting something, say it. Question number 3, what do you need from me that I haven't been giving you? That's really huge. That take some time on it, and think about it, but also don't be defensive if your spouse says something that you don't like,
Mm-hmm.
because your spouse also has to be vulnerable and saying like, I actually do need this. And
Yeah,
that's
they have
hard
needs
enough.
too, and their needs aren't necessarily the same as yours.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard. Like, let's not negate, like, it's hard just to say your needs.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to ask for help.
Well, especially when you're on the go, when you have all these different things going on like we do, it's just,
Yeah.
finding time. That's the moment. You were given a moment. Say your piece, say it, and then, okay, brain, off to the next task.
Yeah. And then another question is like, what are my blind spots? And then, the last question is, what is your dream for our future? And I think that these are important because you're building trust and vulnerability with one another. But at the same time, you're ending on this note of like, but we're on the same team. We are a team. We have the same road forward. We're on the same path forward. So like, what are we trying to build forward together? What are we trying to build as we move in our life? And just reminding yourself of that.
Take two.
So many children.
Communication now. So communication is key. And it's a critical component of marriage. And we've been stressing that over multiple episodes. In these severe moments in life, right?
Yeah.
Any area of your marriage that there's an issue going on is going to be magnified. It's not just going to be magnified as in get blown up, but it's also going to be spotlighted too. Yeah. And it's probably going to be something that's on the mind of both of you, whether you realize it or not, right? So communication is key. If you don't communicate already in your marriage and then you go through something that is really tough and really needs you to be joined together, right? To be that, 3-strand cord, and you're not communicating, it's going to get harder. You've not developed the way to communicate. You've not developed as far as just finding time to communicate, you've not developed how should I communicate with my spouse, right? Which comes with years of learning, right? And learning with how is your spouse going to receive the thing that you've said? If you're already in a point where you're at high stress level and you're upset at something and you don't have time to decompress because you're dealing with all these things in this intense moment of time, how's that going to convey in communication? Or the opposite, right? Depending on your personality or whatever you've got going on, you withdraw, right? So you go the opposite direction, right? Where you're not even communicating. And then that's that's a recipe for failure, right? Because you're going to boil up to the point where you explode and you're already in a stressful, maybe even hostile time. And all you're doing is you're throwing gasoline on it.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, communication is critical to success. And in these moments of time is where that's going to be tested. I love you. I'm communicating my love.
What you said a second ago was huge about in the hard times, it's just like revealing the issues that you have in your marriage. Mm-hmm. It's a spotlight on it. Man, it's going to be really hard. But if you could find a way to not fight with each other and be defensive about those spotlighted items and actually work through it, that would be huge. Big hand on the 10.
So moments of stress when your children come in, when you're trying to do a podcast.
We're editing all of that out. But yes, our children keep interrupting us. But listen, we got a good 15, 20 minutes without interruption. So I guess we shouldn't expect too much more than that.
No,
but
that's good.
The spotlight can be really a place of like getting defensive, and being like, well, that was your fart or the fart. That was your fault.
It was a fart sometimes.
Or like, that was your responsibility. Mm-hmm. Why did you drop that ball?
Yeah.
And I think that I don't know why that hasn't happened more with us in this period of time, because I know we don't have all of our stuff figured out. Mm-hmm. I think that there are just levels to these things. Whereas like, I feel like for us right now, we're probably the most taxed, maybe stressed. I don't know what the right word is that we've been in our marriage.
As the twins.
I've been thinking about that. If you don't know, we had twins, within 1 year of having our first child. So we literally had 3 children under the age of 1 in our home at the same time.
And I was going into the office too, so I wasn't able to.
Yeah, I was just
be at home.
I was home by myself. It was incredibly difficult time in our marriage.
And finances were.
Oh my gosh, yeah, finances were
tight.
Nothing. I will say the part about it that was interesting is we came out of that first year with twins. Mm-hmm. thinking like we can conquer anything.
Yeah.
Like if we have survived this, we've gone through battle, we've been through war together, we can survive anything. As a couple, as a married couple. I do think that foundation is strong for us now. There were things that we laid back then that are absolutely active in our life right now during this season. But like, I actually don't know if like what's harder. It's different. Our kids are older now. They're not super dependent on us, but now we have more responsibility than we did before. Our finances are different than they are before. There's just different levels of stress in different ways.
Our walk with God's different than before.
Right. Much stronger, much more robust.
Ministry
However,
didn't exist back then.
I have a job in a ministry now that I didn't have back then.
No.
I didn't have work. I was just taking care of the kids, which was enough. It was plenty. But I remember back then surviving day by day. And I remember thinking to myself, or hour by hour, so if I think about it that way, then we are doing better now than we were back then. Because I do remember saying like, I only have to make it until you come home from work.
Yeah.
I only need to make it until bedtime. I just need to make it until nap time. Like I was really on this, like every few hours, just like after one day was done, it was like, I literally did it. I made it today. I have a coffee cup that says today's goal is to keep the tiny humans alive. It's a funny joke, but there was that season where I was like, I need to keep me alive and them alive. That's the goal every day. It doesn't matter if everyone's gotten a bath, if we've gone on a walk. It doesn't matter what we've eaten. Am I alive? Are they alive? And it was really like that. And when you're surviving a day at a time, I would say that if that seems a little corny to you, if you're like, like take it one day by a time. If that frustrates you, if someone says that, just take it one day at a time. I would encourage you that you probably have not been in a situation that has been super taxing and demanding on you. Because when you've been in those situations where you truly are just trying to take it one day at a time or 3 hours at a time, then you actually can appreciate that in a much different way. We're like, you know what? No, I am taking it one day at a time, and that is okay. And that's enough. All of that being said, I don't know why maybe that's why our marriage is okay right now. Spotlight has shown some things, but we've adapted and we've pivoted. And I think that's just something that you really need to sit down with in that communication, in that conversation as a couple. If you're going through something difficult, Jacob picked up and took the kids and took them to school every day. And not because he had to. There was an element that he actually likes it. He likes getting out of the house. He likes being able to take that little bit of a break, get some fresh air. Jacob loves tasks, like a little man on a quest, like a knight. Like you love going and accomplishing tasks. And that's great because it's super helpful for so many things in our marriage. But that's my responsibility now. I'm picking up the kids from school every day. I'm taking them to school every morning. And then as soon as I drop them off and coming home and then homeschooling, so like that was something that was naturally like, I didn't really give him an option. I just said, babe, I'm taking this on my plate. Like I am taking the kids to school. I'm picking them up. This is my thing. We had talked about even the trash and the recycling, like if that was going to be on my plate too. And you're like, no, you can't take everything. And so like we communicated, on those things. There are things about preparing food that is really stressful and demanding. And I'm shouldering the majority of that burden. But now there's a little bit 2.5 weeks in that we're like starting to maybe transition a little bit where maybe a small portion of that you can, take on. And I think as long as you keep just talking with each other and as long as you keep saying like, we are on the same team, like we are living the same life. We are raising the same kids. We are living in the same home. We have the same in-laws and parents and things, like the same extended family. We're on the same team. We are the captains of this ship. If an iceberg comes and hits, it's not just one of our faults. It's on both of us. Yeah. And I think if you can really start to view it in that team way, it's super helpful. And I think that's a big struggle that we can share with another day. We could probably do a whole episode on it. But a lot of newlyweds, a lot of the issues that they suffer with is because their life has been them. They've been their own captain of their team, or they've
talked about it. We talked about it in a couple of,
or they've been a teammate on their family's team. And so you do think of things like it's a me, and what are my responsibilities and my roles and my actions and my things, and not and not the we. And I think these life circumstances, when they trouble you and they get you down and they're hard and they're challenging, I would just encourage you, like, start reframing that mindset of like, this is our problem. What is our solution?
Mm-hmm.
What's my part to play in this solution? How can I help my teammate?
Yeah. And it's not solved just when your portion of the problem is solved, or whatever was bothering you is solved. The solution has to be equitable to both of you, right? That you can't even call it a solution when whatever was bothering you is gone. It's only a solution when it is dealt with for both of you, when that
right.
playing field has been leveled.
Right. So I think that's good for this first episode coming back.
Yeah.
We really do want to come back more and have more podcast episodes with you guys. If this works out and the video's not half bad, then maybe we can just keep doing this every once in a while.
We are getting some equipment, a little gripper
maybe.
handheld thing. Maybe
this isn't that bad. I'm kind of okay with it.
Oh, I want a gripper.
All right. Well, we'll get Jacob a handle.
Preserve my hands for my work.
We love you guys. Listen,
love you
if
all.
you have a friend that is getting married or is newly married, or heck, I don't know, maybe they've been married for a long time, they just need a friend, some marriage friends.
They've been through it.
Yeah, I don't know.
They know what it's like.
Then please go ahead and share this with somebody. Radical Direction is just on the main Sevenfold YouTube channel, which is what you're watching it on. So yeah, just go ahead and share that with a friend. We have a lot of great content on here in a lot of other ways. I'm going to go ahead and link right here that there is a not in the description box, but I'll link it on this. I'll link it on the screen here. The Christian Anything show. It's our Monday night live show that we do for the ministry. It's super fun. Jacob's been on an episode. He's in the comments a ton. And so that's something that you guys, if you want just something to laugh, something lighthearted, especially if you're having a stressful time, but you want just a fun show that you can watch in a Christian perspective, I would highly recommend
Mondays, 8:30 Eastern.
Yes, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Live broadcast, hour and a half each night. So thanks for joining us on Radical Direction. As you know here, we're all about obedience to the Lord and radical obedience. So we just want to say, go live radical, and we love you guys.
Take care.
This episode has been made possible by our generous viewers and audience members just like you. If you'd like to donate to the show to keep our ministry running and growing, producing more shows just like this one, please head to thesevenfold.com/partners to donate there. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Radical Direction. Until next time, go live radical.